Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming to this, is it the 10th or the 11th of these Triple ID conversations? They've been really good so far. Max, who's here, did one a couple of months ago, and this one's going to be no exception. I'm really delighted that Sheila Pontis is joining us. Really one of perhaps the preeminent expert in our world of practical information design about research and human-centered testing, as she called it. I asked to speak on user testing, but it's a better way of putting it, isn't it? So you've seen who Sheila is from the publicity for the event. She's from Argentina, works now in New York, and she's been educated also in Spain and London. Has a really wide view of information design. And while she was on the Triple ID executive board, she was involved with a really interesting survey of our members. One of the result of which is this series of talks. I've been wanting to do this sort of thing for a long time, but the members gave us a push that they wanted more information, more sense of community, more going on. And so this is what we're doing. So Sheila, hand over to you. I know you've got some other things to say about yourself, to introduce what you're doing now, because since your book on field research, you've done a couple of others. So I hope you'll tell us about those. This is your opportunity to plug them.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for the invitation. I'm glad to see some old faces. I'm happy to see new names. I think the way I will structure today is I will give you like a brief overview of different things I'm doing, so you can have a better sense of the type of my approach to information design, and actually as my approach to design, which is slightly probably unconventional. And then we can open. I have a few questions from some of you guys, but if you haven't sent the question in advance, I would love this to be more a dialogue. Just jump in, ask a question, something that you are working on, something that you would have loved to know the answer, something that is unclear about research. Let's just keep it to research. I know some questions are more about other things, but just to keep it framed so we can have some answers in this short time that we have together today. And then we can keep the conversation offline if needed. So I'm gonna share my screen. Hopefully it's going to work. There we go. Okay. I'm gonna move you there. Yeah. Okay. So just briefly for the ones who are not as familiar with my work. So, okay. So I've been an information designer for probably now 23, 24 years. So it's been kind of a long time, and my own practice and my understanding of the profession has evolved quite a bit from the very first time. But I do define myself as a hybrid information designer. So I don't do only one thing, and everything I do, I approach it from an integrated perspective. I combine my information design mindset and skills, human-centered research. Lately, I would say the last 6-7 years, I've been shifting more into creative problem solving per se, which I'm going to show some examples in a moment. It's not necessarily related to design, but just with a way of approaching problems and life. And also I've been combining all this with cognitive science to really understand how people process information, how can we make design decisions that are in line with the way we perceive the world in general. In this way, try to create solutions or interventions, as I like to call them now, that are more effective to the users. So to an extent, I practice education and research. And as a practitioner, I have, there we are. I lead an information design consultancy in the New York area, where we work with most of the challenges are open-ended, in the sense like clients come to us without having a clear understanding of what the communication problem is. and they have something that is not working, and we really help them trying first to understand what the problem at hand is, and then what would be the best approach to try to come up with an intervention to address that problem. Sometimes ends up being an information design solution, sometimes it's not. Sometimes they come thinking that they want something digital and they realize that their lack of understanding is somewhere else and we have to shift down the road. So it's not like I work with a specific type of information design. I don't do infographics or digital or wayfinding. Depends on the problem that the client has to an extent. I've been working on design higher education for a long time, working either in undergraduate and graduate levels. Currently, I'm teaching at MIT at the IDM program that stands for Integrated Design and Management, where I don't teach information design literally, but I teach design as problem solving, combined with human-centered research and combined with information design as well. As you can see for the images, my students work in a variety of problems, from classic information design to more, we need to solve this social issue, what can we do? So to an extent, I merge and integrate all my different skills to try to help them approach these problems from a design perspective. And it's also a very cross-disciplinary program. So I don't only work with designers, I work with the students and with young professionals that are coming from engineering, psychology, computer science, any other discipline. So it's a challenge. How can you introduce them to thinking like a designer and even thinking also like an information designer when the challenge demands? Lately, as I mentioned before, I'm also shifting into teaching creativity to non-design students. And this is something I'm focusing more and more, is teaching creativity or creative problem solving to science PhD students. So I've been working for the last 3 years with biology students. They are doing their PhD in biological sciences, from paleontology, chemistry, biology, and other issues that you can imagine. And I introduced them to thinking that the world is not black and white. There are many different possible ways of approaching a problem. And the goal is to help them rethink scientific approaches, coming up with more novel research questions, changing the methodology, approaching the work they are doing from a more creative point of view, which is not related to design. It's not related to art necessarily, but it's a way of approaching problems and approaching life from a different perspective. And to an extent, my third leg, I do a lot of research, human-centered research, as much as I can, in different areas, but specifically I focus on people and social challenges, from technology for people with disabilities, for creativity for well-being. So individual creativity, how can I reconnect with my own imagination in order to approach everyday problems with a more open mind. And lately, I also been working in design and improving like students' well-being and students' life at college, from sleeping problems to loneliness to mental health issues. So these are all different ongoing projects that I'm working at different institutions. Which to an extent, I wanted to show you this diversity because I don't work, as I said before, on one specific type of information design problem or design problem. I like describing I work throughout the scale of design challenges. And there are many different ways you can illustrate these, but something I like showing is kind of the spectrum of projects I work on, from things that are very framed, like specific tools, or I need an infographic, or I need something which I know exactly what I have to do. The topic is easy, I can do it by myself. From challenges that are much more unframed, where I cannot do anything alone. I usually partner, I work in collaboration with people in other disciplines, and we try to frame that challenge in a way that then we can intervene. So it changes a little bit how you approach. The type of work I do is not so much focused on technology or the tools, but it's the thinking. And then depending on where we land is the type of solution or intervention that I'm working on. But there's a common denominator, which in all of these type of challenges are people. I am really interested in understanding what people need, understanding the challenges from people's perspective. Many times the client comes to you and say, we need this because X, Y, Z. But first, before taking the client's word for granted, so I just go and talk with the people who have the issue, try to understand from their perspective, try to empathize with them, and only then I start working on the challenge and then talking with the clients and so on. And this is what, to an extent, led me to focus on human-centered research. And that's why when Rob said to me, do you want to talk about user testing? I said, well, actually, it's, to me, research is more that testing. It starts before, and it's human because we are talking about humans. We're talking about people. When we talk about user testing, we assume that there's a user already. So we are going to be talking about that today, but I approach research much early on in the process, even before you have something for someone to interact with or to use. So that's why I like talking more about human-centered research. To an extent, this means I do not work with numbers. I do not work with data, with hard numbers. I mean, I of course have an understanding of statistical research and market research, but my focus is on words. I focus on what users say, the feelings, the emotions, the motivations. I interpret what they said. I draw conclusions and infer from everything they say and they create or they do. And I work with that raw material. So of course, numbers are good. I'm not against quantitative research, but I think there's an overemphasis on numbers, and people are a little bit scared about going into more qualitative research. So all my work focuses on qualitative and contextual focus research, which means not talking with people in a lab, but talking with people in the real context of use. As much as I can, I try to go to their houses, their workplaces, the street, if you're doing something for the public space, because that changes the perception of the problem, that changes how they feel, how they express themselves. And all this knowledge I've been collecting for many, many years. I think many of you are already familiar. I kind of synthesized everything in my first book, which was published in 2018, Making Sense of Field Research. And last year, thanks to people at the university, they say in Spanish, Universidad Autónoma Metropolitana, which I think there are some people here today with us. They translated the book from English to Spanish, which I was extremely happy because there's a huge community, which Spanish-speaking community, which don't have as much access to English material. So it's already available. You can access online. You can get the book, but it's the same content just translated into Spanish. And what I really try to do is a synthesis or my learnings from social sciences, anthropology, psychology, ethnography, all those different set of methods apply to information design scenarios, information design challenges, which are most of the questions I get from my students. How do we do this? How can we apply these different methods into a design context? So a little bit, I just try to give some guidance and some understanding of where in the process you can use these methods and how you can use them. And the last thing, we have been working for too many years now, but I'm extremely happy to say it's going to be published in early November. This is my third book, which is called Information Design Unbound, where we are representing, I co-authored this with Michael Babwasin, he's my partner in crime, and we really try to present a much more expansive view of information design. To an extent, is how this spans throughout that scale of challenges. And to me, the paradox, but to me it's in a positive way, we are all talking about artificial intelligence, technology, and how that is going to take over everything, while this book is actually not focusing on technology at all. To an extent, we are focusing on the mindset. It's meant to be a textbook for people who don't know what information design is, and also to help educators introduce people to information design, and it's focused on the mindset. How information designers approach challenges, where we have to focus on, what type of challenges do we work on, what are the different steps we can go through. There's a chapter on research as well. Of course, it's a much more condensed version, but it's an introduction to the field, from the thinking to more visual aspects as well. There are more than 65 contributors. It's a very visual book. And there are also exercises which do not include technology, have to do with cognitive biases, have to do with assumptions, have to do with perception, have to do with research, with empathy, with ethics, and so on. You can check it more in the website, but we are still completing the website and adding more content about this. And this was the last of my promotion items for the day. So I have a few more slides related to questions, but I'm going to stop here first to see if there are any questions. If anyone who shared questions in advance would like to share the questions in person. And otherwise, we can follow some questions that you already sent. And then I have some slides to help answer some of the questions.
Thanks, Sheila. Why don't you mention the questions, and then the person who asked it, hopefully they're here, can perhaps amplify the question. People won't know what order to go in.
I'm going to go from general to specific, because to an extent, I organized the questions on 3 buckets. Some questions were about what's research, how can we start adopting research in information design, why clients don't believe in that, why information designers don't believe in that, and so on. There are some more tactical questions about when to use research, what methods to use, and there are some questions about how to access users, how to access people, how to use research in that sense. So I think, Max, I would start with your question.
Okay, I've not got it in front of me.
I can read it for you if you want.
Yes, please.
He was actually asking, to an extent, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it's about why there seems to be so much indifference about research on the information designer side and on the client side. And why is that happening? If it is information designers don't advocate for it, or clients don't really know what it is. Something like that, Max?
Yeah, that's a good starting point. Yeah.
I think, to me, it's a little bit on both ends. I think there's still a misunderstanding about, I would say, most of design practices, that they focus more on the visual and not so much on people or on the conceptual side, on what people need. So clients are slightly unaware about the role of research. So that's why probably they don't request from day one, we want research to validate this. They are more interested, if anything, these days with research at the very end. What's the impact of the solution? So for them, research still comes at the end. So once you have something, can we measure the impact of the solution once it's implemented? And I think those information designers who have already adopted research, that's the research they have adopted. So it's more on the end, once they have a solution and they go like testing. That's why user testing is a very common term. But there's no awareness about when research should come in the process. And I think it's because many people are scared of research in terms of it's hard to do it if you don't know how to do it. It seems harder to me than it really is. They don't know how to talk with people. They don't know what to do with the research. Many people collect data and then they don't know what to do. So it's either they think it's a waste of time, it's too hard, it's too time consuming, it's too expensive. There are too many assumptions. So I think it's a combination of both. If we designers don't try to educate ourselves about the potential of research and how that can improve the quality of the final output, clients are not going to ask about something they don't know it exists. So I think it's a little bit of both. There's a lot, I also think, a lot of ego on information designers, and the more we do, the more we think we know better than anyone else what we have to do. And I think it's something I learned with qualitative research is it has been a very humbling experience. Many times I thought I knew what the user needed. And then after having done research with them, I realized, actually, that's not what they need. They actually need something completely different. So it's trying to move ourselves from the center and trying to put the user and trying to move aside our beliefs and assumptions and trying to design for them, not based on what we think is best for them. So I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, I'm sort of surprised. I'm a psychologist, and it's second nature to me to say, well, let's find out. We're not sure, so let's find out. That's that was taught to me as an undergraduate, and I'm amazed at the number of times that it doesn't seem to occur to anyone to find out. My favourite example is the wayfinding system at the Victoria and Albert Museum, which apparently was done by an award-winning signage designer, and they're all very, very pleased with. And my favourite trick at the V&A Museum is to say to people, right, here we're at the entrance, now find the 20th century gallery. And nobody has yet managed to do that. And yeah, the signage there fails in all sorts of ways at all sorts of levels. But it doesn't even seem to occur to anyone that their new signage system was fundamentally bad. And I just can't compute that. And my brain was not taught that way, to just sort of assume that what you do is the right thing to do.
That's something that my students ask me always, but I always see that being done. And my response is, because you see something being done, that doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. Sometimes we copy things just because we have seen them all the time, but that doesn't mean it's effective. Many times, if you actually started taking the time and testing every solution that has been done for many, many years, you will probably be surprised how many of those things are ineffective. But we are very smart at learning ways to work around inefficiencies and making it work. But that doesn't mean it's the best possible intervention that someone could have done. And I think it's reframing that. And I think I wanted to show something regarding to that. I'm just not going to go full screen. So I think one of the first changes in the mindset is understanding that research should be, to me, adopted throughout the process. So let's say, generically speaking, a process can have 4, 5, 10, whatever steps you want. Let's say we divide the design process into early, middle, late stage. We tend to associate research with the late stage, usability or testing, or sometimes where we have a prototype of some sort of. My belief is like research should be plugged in from the very beginning. If you start adopting research as part of your practice since very early on, it's going to help you better understand the problem, then better understand what users need. Then you can even use it when you have a concept. So even before you make all the investments you want and start building something. And to an extent, to anchor this a little bit, there are 2 different types of research, which differ. What this differs is in the goal. I have many questions from the students about what are we doing with research? But when you are doing research, there has to be a goal in mind. Do you want to explore? Do you want to understand something? Or do you want to evaluate something? They have very different goals and very different, same methods in many cases, but different outputs. In one way, so in exploratory research, you're going to end up with much more open-ended data that you have to interpret and then you have to translate into the design process. Evaluative research is much more concrete. It's much more narrow because you're going to test something. Does it work or it doesn't work? What I don't know, features work and which features don't. Exploratory research is slightly more complex in the sense that it's more open-ended. You have to have a slightly more understanding of how to analyze the data and how to translate it into design decisions. So if we go back to our process, we should start with exploratory research. We should start with something much broader. And then we can start plugging in evaluative research towards the end. But the tendency is to start at the end and we forget the beginning. So sometimes we do research at the end, and because we haven't done the beginning, we need to go back many steps because things don't work. So it's just like changing the mindset and understanding what do I want to learn first, and then what type of research I need to do. And that changes the goal, changes the approach, and it's going to change whatever you are trying to find out. And I'm going to stop here again. Stop share. Questions?
So Sheila, you started on a very general issue there. Has somebody asked a question about something very specific that we could talk about, where you can perhaps pick up research method that might be appropriate?
Yes. Some of the questions was, I don't know if Sarah is here. There are many questions about when to use a method. When do I know how to use a method, or when do I use another one? And my response to that is, you need to think first about what do you need to learn, what do you need to understand, rather than thinking, I want to use interviews, is what do you need to understand? And so, hold on.
One of the questions, I think I asked a question about, what do you do when you can't get access to your humans, not just your users? And I think someone else mentioned the question of research ethics as well. And so the case I had in mind is from our summer school, and the summer school people may remember the work we did on leaflets for people with delirium and their families. And for medical ethical reasons, we can't get to those people to actually to do the work. So what do we do? Perhaps this slide will explain.
No, I don't have that one, but so first, always, if you can have access to your direct users, that's the best thing you can do. If you can't have access to direct users, as your case, Rob, have access to indirect users. It could be people who have experienced that. So some sort of, in your case, which was the problem, was
it was
a condition. So someone who has experienced a similar medical condition, if it's not literally that one, it could be someone who experienced something similar. If you can't get access to them, you can have just any person who has experienced any sort of condition. That could be another, those more like indirect users. You could also talk with experts, so to help you understand. Depending also, Robert, you told me that they created information, but I wasn't sure what was exactly, if it was a leaflet, if it was something they had to work with.
Yes, it was a leaflet, and essentially delirium is this very frightening condition that you get. Many people get in hospital when they're coming out of an operation, and it's very frightening for the families, and they don't know what's happening and what the prognosis is. And so the leaflet was designed to explain it and to be as reassuring as possible.
So what you're trying to test there is, I'm assuming, is first, if it is understandable, if the way the condition is explained comes across in a clear way, and I presume you're trying to test whether it calms down or reassures.
I think that's right. I think something like a leaflet of that kind, which is very non-specific. What's its goal? Well, it's to communicate what's going on and to give you a sense of what the future, what the future holds. And so, yes, you could, if you can get people who've perhaps been through that before, or even get to the right people, but through informal channels rather than through the hospital, who have to have ethics.
Oh yeah,
ethics in place. Yes, it's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, and so any person is better than no one. So I would start with someone who had some sort of medical condition, but I think based on what you are describing, any person with certain similar demographics would be able to help assess the understandability of whatever is the word of what they are doing. However, in that case, for example, I would have suggested they talk to some people in advance to really understand what about the condition was unclear. So that would help them have developed a much more targeted type of leaflet to the specific things that were unknown. So that's how you start baking research earlier into the process, rather than creating something based on your assumptions about what people don't understand, and they're testing that.
Thank you.
And this is a little bit, I'm going to go back because there was another question about methods. So there was a question about working on simplifying information sheets on administrative procedures for migrant with low second language skills. What is the best method to test the comprehensibility of written information with this type of audience? To an extent, is similar to what Ro was asking. It's first understanding. So in this case, you want to understand whether something is understandable or not. My suggestion is first it would be interview, something that you can actually show them the content and say, can you understand this? Can you understand, what things you understand, what things you don't understand, which words come across clearer. You could also run some sort of observations to see whether they are able to complete the form in a reasonable time frame, which areas require more time or which areas are more unclear. I don't know, Chiara, if you have anything you want to ask, or if I'm answering your question.
Yeah, the problem is that most of the time their level of language is low, so it's different to understand from them, speaking with them, if they understood what they read. So maybe I ask them to, for instance, underline words or part of text they didn't understand, but I don't know if at the end they really understood this content, even if it's simplified. That's my problem in this case.
Do you speak the same language as them, or is it?
Yeah, because they come from quite different places, different countries. So I speak with them, in Italian. I'm from Italy, but yeah, and also the information are in their second language, the Italian, but they are learning the language. So I don't know if they understood, because I can't communicate in a normal way. That's the problem.
Another thing you can do is you can ask them to do something applying that knowledge.
Yeah.
So in that case, you're going to realize whether they are understanding, whether they are reading or not. It doesn't have to be something complex. It just have to be something related to the content that you were trying to test.
Yes, good idea. Thanks. Yeah.
Then always drawing and making are good strategies. And even when verbal language or written language is a problem, drawing, making is another way to help them express whatever they need to.
Thanks.
There was a question about how do we advocate for and integrate inclusion of research within the educational curricula? I don't know if Sakia is here.
Yes, I am. That was my question indeed, because it's just not integrated. I'm a scientist by training, and I came to design later on. And so I approach it from a very scientific perspective. And I think research is absolutely integral. And I'm just totally baffled by these design students that I end up working with that have no clue, and that would rather, as Rob was saying, when it's really difficult to get to the target audience, they sort of just stop and freeze rather than thinking creatively about how they might be able to get this sort of information. So I think it could be really important to get research and also the associated ethics more into educational curricula for designers. But how do we go about that?
I'm struggling with the second part. I mean, do you have control over the class content?
No, I don't. So I end up giving them a design brief and they have to respond to that, but I am not the one that's actually teaching them. And so I try and integrate it as much as I can.
Because, for example, I think I haven't, the last 15 years, I haven't taught a design class without a research component. But so I don't believe that everything about design or research can be taught in one class. They have to be complementary classes. It's too much knowledge for only one brain. So I normally teach a design research class where I introduce the students to the methods. And they just focus on learning what research means, the different types of research, qualitative, quantitative, the different goals, context of use. Then we talk about ethics there as well. We talk about different methods. We talk about when to use different methods. And they then work in a project towards the end. But to an extent, the design project is secondary. So they don't focus too much on the aesthetics of the project because the focus is more on the research. And then you have a second class where the students who already learned the methods, they have to apply them into the research. So, and also I don't give them like predefined design briefs. Normally the briefs are coming from them. So they already kind of try to identify the problem themselves. They use research to further unpack that problem, to identify the users. So it needs to explicitly be taught. If you don't teach them how to do research, what is good research, what is bad research, the different times, the different steps or moments in the process that they can use it, they won't know how to use it. But you need to have, either you have to convince the teacher, if it's not you, to include it into the curriculum, or if you have control, just bake it in from day one. Kind of move them from technology. For example, none of my classes I teach technology. I never taught it because I try to focus on the first part. Technology can be learned anywhere. It changes so fast and these days that I don't even know. So yes, sadly, I don't have a magic recipe, but just like bake it in from day one. And explain the value of research. Try to remove this mystery that research is a monster that's going to come and bite you. It's just one more set of tools that you need to learn how to use it. And it can really change the quality of the final output. Once they start doing it, they start kind of losing a little bit the fear, but you just need to make them do it.
Another question.
You have, yeah, I think you have other questions also. I don't know if you something about ethics.
I do. I find it's also very often overlooked by the students that I work with. How can we, again, it's about education and it's about making it part of every single design project that they do, I think, that involves humans, which I don't know many design projects that don't involve humans. So.
But can you explain what you mean by ethics, by research ethics, Saskia?
It's, first of all, it's simply the consideration that in doing what you're doing and pursuing the goal that you're pursuing, that you do no harm to the other person or people that are involved. That's at its most basic, what I understand to be research ethics.
So what it means is like, doing research ethically means ensuring that participants' identities, personal information, anything that could put them at risk psychologically or physically is going to be kept, is going to be taken care. So means I'm really like orthodox with this in my students. I think they don't like it very much because you always need to make sure that all the participants' identities is anonymous. The only person who knows who the people that you spoke with are is the student. I shouldn't even know. And sometimes you have the students bringing name and surname of the participants into a final presentation. So from day one, you need to teach kind of ethically means respect the identities of your participants. Anonymize everything they say. So if there's anything that could lead to their identities, remove it. Be respectful of their words. If they said, this is horrible, don't say they didn't like this. Just use the same words, this is horrible, and try to understand why. When you present the data, present it in a way that is contextualized. So if, I'm making something up, if a mother who is 25 years old from X background with this job title said something, add that information together with a quote, because that gives context into whatever the person is saying. If someone is in the middle of an interview and decides that they don't want to be part of the interview anymore and they want to leave, you have to let them leave and you are not allowed to use the data. And even though it was the best information you learned, you cannot use it. You have to remove it. So these kind of things is like, you need to teach them. To me, it's harder to make a student unlearn something than to teach it well from scratch. So that has been my philosophy always. So once they learn it, they become like much more stickler than me. Oh, Sheila, but you said one thing and now you're doing another one. You're right. So that's what you want from the students, to start identifying those things. I usually, when I teach in my classes, I make them go through ethical approval in all the research projects they do. Even if it is, at least in the States, you have the expedited research approval that takes like 2 seconds, because usually they don't work in something that is very sensitive, or they don't deal with patients that like minors, or those are kind of the hardest populations to get ethical approval. But just teach them from the very beginning the right way of doing research. Because, I mean, you can't do research without all those ethical considerations, but to an extent, you cannot make it public at all, not even to a client. You have to keep it to yourself and you cannot use it. You can't present any data point in that sense. So it's kind of making sure they understand the difference.
Sheila, Flavia has a hand up and there's also a question in chat. We can't hear you, Flavia.
Oh,
Flavia.
You have no sound.
Hello.
Hi,
Oh.
that's it.
Are you here?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm Flavia from Brazil. Sorry for my English. We already put people at the center and we conduct jobs to be done interview with a lot of information. And we arrive at the communication that's very focused on people's needs. We are consultants that work with website and landing pages, you know. Our challenge here is how to put the design to clear the message. To my visitor, run the site, stay in the flow, to do what I want, to do the conversion. I don't know, maybe the icon or illustration. How do I know this kind of resource
or methodology
to put the design connected with the messaging? This is my challenge. I don't know if your field of work, because we didn't know you yet. we are here for, it was a feature that put in the LinkedIn, and oh my God, this is my source of maybe light in the final tunnel. So we are here.
No pressure. Let me see, let me paraphrase. You're asking me, how do you know what images go with the text?
With the copywriting, yes. In the
Are you talking about?
What kind of
So did I-
content? Can you explain the content? What are we talking about? Are we talking about a website that is
when you come into one website and you read the first messaging,
the hero section.
the hero section, for example,
Maybe.
normally have one imaging in the other side,
Or topics, or
topics,
icons, or animation, or a video. How can I put the right design?
not the white or
the better design for my clients stay on the flow.
we studying the relevance of the images and icons or organization or information organization. See first at read the text. When we build one communication for digital, a gente toma cuidado para que as pessoas façam essa compreensão rápida.
We take care of the comprehension, a rapid comprehension from when I see this message, okay, I understand.
We understand the design.
Potentialize
the communication in website.
It's very connected.
And here,
I think I understand.
Okay, thank you very much.
I will try. This is to me a case of what I was saying before. Don't wait until you have selected images and text to do any testing. Start very early on. For example, you need to interact with your intended audience and ask them first what type of content you would like to see in a website. What types of topics would be the most appropriate for whatever topic you are dealing with? Which imagery do you think would work best for that? Or what type of images would you like to see? Another option is you could have different options. There's something called A/B testing. You could have different options and ask them to choose A or B. If you're doing something like that, this is more quantitative. You need many people to have a reliable result. There's another method called card sorting. This is used much early on. Card sorting helps you come up with an information structure or an information architecture that is in line with what users are expecting to see in a website. What they would like to see first, what they would like to see second, what they would like to see third. You could also do card sorting. It's normally done with text, but you could use it with images. My suggestion is Google card sorting, and you're going to learn more about that. Otherwise, send me an email and I can give you some resources. But these are methods that you can use to help you before you put together the layout, before you put together a prototype, identify which topics would be more appropriate for that audience. What are they expecting to see in such a website? And once you have a better sense of that, then you can create something and then you can test that prototype. But my sense is that you need to have a better sense of what type of content they are expecting to see. So card sorting, A/B testing, those are more quantitative type of things that you can do also online. SurveyMonkey is good for this kind of thing.
Okay, thank you very much.
I see Nora, you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Sheila. Maybe my question goes back to the way we are teaching information design. And I would like you to, well, sorry, everyone. I'm from the team of WAM University, and there's a lot of people here that are very happy to have translated Sheila's book. But anyway, back to here. How or what is your experience about teaching someone outside the discipline? What are the challenges and advantages? And are we really ready to go out to break our shell as information designers? Because you talk about changing the mindset. So are we really able to change the mindset? That's I would like to know about your experience of teaching someone outside the discipline.
Changing the mindset, Nora, you mean from what to what?
I feel that information design have been kept in a shell, and now in new experiences, teaching someone outside the discipline on information design might have could be a challenge, but also could be something that we can help us to change our own mindset as information designers. And what can you tell us about that experience of you teaching that?
We're going a little bit away from research. I will try to keep it short so we funnel another question. So I think probably the last 10 years for sure, I've been teaching to non-designers, and what I have found is like you need to, so as designers, we have learned a very specific way to approach problems. We already know that there are many, for example, many different solutions for one specific problem. We know certain things like exploring, experimenting. These are kind of basic things that we are just, it's integral to the way we work. When you teach to students who are not designers, you need to start from there because they are coming with a very dualistic mindset in my experience. What do you want me to do? How many of these things do you want me to do? What do you mean? This or that? And to me, with my mindset, I mean that you first need to start teaching them different ways of approaching problems. I don't have the right answer. There's no the right answer for the problem I'm giving you. There are 15 different answers. Your job is to identify one that is in line with what the users need. So I think to me, the most challenging part has been that, and I'm not even talking about the aesthetic side, because non-designers, in my case, some of them don't differentiate orange from red from pink. It's the same color. So how you teach that sensibility? It's training, because we have our eyes are trained. We see Clive's books on the back and I can tell different colors. Someone who doesn't have that training, they don't differentiate, they don't realize, for example, that shapes communicate. So you need to go a step further first. Visual communication, visual variables, how, so it's a slightly more complex. That's why in these cases, you cannot teach everything in one class. It has to be different classes that work together to help them build that foundation.
Thank you.
You're muted, Rob. Sorry.
My job to say that. Yeah, just time, I think, for one quick question before we come up to the hour and probably have to stop. Anybody? Is there one in chat? Let's see.
I have a question.
So, hello.
Hi, Rob. Hi, Sheila.
Hi, Sol.
Congratulations on the book. I can't wait to get my hands on it. I've been listening. I'm at work at the moment, so I've been listening in parallel to other tasks I've been doing. But it's been very interesting to me to try to reconcile the things you talk about, especially in terms of education, with the reality of being a practicing information designer. And my question is, how do we make our practice less improvised, more based on the things that we study? And how do we make the theory that we teach more aligned to the reality of working with clients, with deadlines? with nobody wanting to research or spending money on it? It's a question.
It's $1 million question. No, but to me, so the way I came across to research was when I was doing my PhD. So I learned it in the theory, so in the more academic side. So that's why I'm very orthodox, because I'm doing the right way. So I think my job has been, how can we keep some of these academic principles so we keep the rigor and we keep it reliable with the practice timeframes and constraints, which I think that's the challenge. I think once you understand the basic principles behind research and behind the methods, you are able to understand how everything can be adapted to the shortest time frame. Of course, you cannot, I think sometimes there's a disconnection between what you want to do and the time frame you have. If you only have 2 days, don't aim to do a diary study with 30 people, because you won't be able to do it. So, but the only way you're going to know that if you understand the role of each method, what's the implication of each one, what can you learn from each method. So I think what is missing is really understanding the theory behind each method in a basic term. And then if you're an information designer, you should be able to translate that understanding to the specifics of each problem and the limitations that you're working with, or the constraints. I think what we tend to do, at least my students, rather than trying to understand that knowledge, or maybe because there's no time at universities, maybe because we don't make the time as teachers, they just I want to use interviews, or I want to use observations. Why you want to do that? Oh, because I need to do research. That's not the approach. The approach is you have this problem. What do you need to learn? Which tools are available for you to help you learn that? Okay, you have these limitations. It's kind of a matching game. And little by little, you start adapting and you start adopting that as your daily practice.
Yeah, that's excellent. I just have this experience of professional projects where you just dive in, and it's very frustrating because you have, on one hand, you have to show that you're doing work, and it's not really the best way to do it. Yeah.
We are going back to Max's question at the very beginning. It's because I think we are not used to, and we have that fear that if we request 1 more week or 3 more days for doing research, clients are going to say no, or there's not going to be budget. I think it is our job to re-educate clients. And I mean, we have done it as part of our consultancy. And we were at the beginning of what they are going to say, but they say, okay, do it. That's the answer. Okay, do it. And then when you start showing the results, they say, this actually is interesting. They see the difference. And I think the best way to show the value is just by doing it and by showing how that has improved the quality of what you're doing, kind of the before and after, what would have happened. But we are the first one who have to try to do it. It doesn't have to be a whole study of a week or 2 weeks, just do it 1 week. There are many methods that you can do even online that help you. Something is better than nothing. Just keep that in mind and start little by little. And once you start showing benefits, okay, next project, you try a little, you push a little bit more. But I think it's an education type of mindset in this case.
Hey, Sheila, thank you very much. And thanks everybody for sending your questions in and for participating so enthusiastically. I've had a long career in information design. And at one point I had a company and we had a research division, we had eye tracking, very, very hard to sell this to clients. I do understand exactly what you're saying, but I see research as something that's quite humbling, when you expose yourself to users. And it's almost as if you have to do a minimum amount in your life to start to align yourself with other people's points of view and understand there are different perspectives. Even if you can't do it on every project, if you just do some, it changes you. And design we sell design on a spectrum from logic to magic, and clients often think they're just getting the magic. but you've got to give them the logic as well, and that's what research underpins and informs your magic. And I think Maxwell's problem with the V&A, and by the way, we pitched for that job a few years ago and didn't get it, and yes, I'm sort of aware of what you're talking about and all the research we were going to do about that's all water under the bridge. So I just want to really thank you so much, Sheila, for getting us thinking. I feel we're almost getting going now with our discussion. I'm just putting some links into chat, which is my way of, first of all, plugging Sheila's next book. Again, you can go to the website about it. To plug the Triple ID, if you're not a member, please join. And by going to perspective.triplid.net, you'll find out about everything else that's happening. The next couple of talks in this series are from people who've won awards. The Triple ID Information Design Awards have been judged recently. They haven't quite been announced, but two of the winners are going to talk beginning of June and the beginning of July. It's the first Thursday of the month. The Information Design Summer School, there's still places left. Several people here have been on it, and that's the 22nd to 24th of May in Vienna, just before the Vision Plus conference on health information design, and they're all the websites you can go to. But I don't want to take over there, but we always have a few plugs at the end. Sheila, thank you so much. Get Sheila's book, because there's a lot of specifics, there are a lot of methods in that field research book that you need, to pick up on the ideas that Sheila's presented us with. Yes, you've got it there. A bit of feedback for you. I was looking for my copy of it, and it's yellow, isn't it? But the spine's white. It's either the spines are white, yeah.
It's red.
Different color anyway. Is it red? And so I always look for the yellow spine, and it takes me ages to find it. So there's some user feedback for your designer. But thank you so much, Sheila. Let's give Sheila a round of applause, whoever that works.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. So please do join us again, everybody, next time, which is the first Thursday in June, which I think is the 1st of June.